Hi, and welcome to this installment of Bergeron Briefs. If you haven't seen the show before, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an attorney. I'm with a large firm called Myrick O'Connell. There are 70 of us, and everybody does whatever they like because there are so many of us that you can do that. And I do nothing but elder law. So as you probably know, I often appear at the Salt Marsh and do presentations there. And the purpose of these shows is to supplement that by having you, if you're a senior or helping a senior during their lives, to know the programs and the people that you really ought to know in order to be able to live a good life as a senior. Now, one of those people, I guarantee you that you have not seen before because she's from off island, right? Jennifer Hoadley, who is with me here today.
Hi.
Who is from the Alzheimer's Association. And you're the director or the manager of the Southeast region for the Alzheimer's Association of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which is in turn one of the state organizations that make up the big national Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah. So we're a national organization. Our chapter name is Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and regionally we're part of a New England region.
Yeah.
So we all try to share information and help each other out and make sure that all pockets of the land are covered and people are getting the services that they need.
And you're covering a lot of communities, which includes the Cape and the islands.
Yes.
And here you are on the island.
Here I am.
That's right. And so today, you're here for the day, right? And you were nice enough to take the ferry. I took a terrible plane ride on a terrible. I was telling Jennifer earlier that I called my paralegal when I got off the plane today. My paralegal, many folks know, was from the other island. And told her, I said, now I remember why I don't take the plane. It's one of those where it's going, and then it drops and it goes up. But you took the boat and you said it was okay.
It was a smooth ride.
Ferry was
no
okay,
bumps.
which means you'll come back.
Absolutely.
Means you'll come back. So one of the reasons why you came out was because you're really heavily involved in this kind of statewide effort to create so-called dementia-friendly communities in every community in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
And about what you do with the Alzheimer's Association, the kinds of things the Alzheimer's Association offers to folks, and how you see that fitting into what we'll call a dementia-friendly community. And by the way, as we've talked, what I always consider a dementia-friendly community is, so my mother died in a nursing home, and my oldest brother has an early stage Alzheimer's diagnosis. So I say to myself, it's coming. And so I just want to know that I can live in my community until I die without it being dangerous and without it being embarrassing. Mm-hmm. That's a dementia-friendly community to me. So tell me about what a dementia-friendly Massachusetts or dementia-friendly communities means in terms of your perspective in the Alzheimer's Association.
Right.
How's that?
So
in 10 words. No.
10 words. Well, I think the biggest thing, and you've touched on it already, is there is a large stigma attached to having the disease. A lot of people see it as just a natural part of aging, which it's not. Dementia is not a natural part of aging at all.
And it's not just hardening of the arteries, which is what it was when my mother had it, right? Hardening
Yeah. So there's more to it than that. Certainly, people can develop symptoms of dementia for a variety of reasons, and one of the things that we push at the Alzheimer's Association is getting to a doctor to figure out what is going on, what's the cause of these symptoms, because it might not be Alzheimer's disease. The Alzheimer's Association, our organization is the Alzheimer's Association and related dementias. So whether you have a diagnosis or not, it doesn't matter, right? We can still support people with any type of dementia symptoms. But again, you want to find out what's the cause. For some people, it's something that can be reversed, whether it's medications that are interacting in a funny way or some other illness that's causing the symptoms.
I always tell people, don't decide that you have Alzheimer's because you're in the hospital.
Right.
A bad time to make that decision. All kinds of other things are going on at the hospital, right?
And early diagnosis is really important for a variety of reasons. Just like any disease, you want to know what you're dealing with, what are the treatments available. And if it is Alzheimer's disease, we know that it's a progressive illness. It will get worse over time. So important to be involved in the planning early on. So we often will point people in the right direction for elder law attorneys like you, and make sure that people do the proper planning, make sure they have all the legal documents in place. And a way for people to access that type of information is by calling our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline.
Yeah, talk about a little bit more about that.
Yeah,
And by the way, because I had heard of that a long time ago, but always thought of it more as a crisis thing. Like call the Samaritans or call the Alzheimer's hotline.
Right.
But from the way you describe it, it's really a much more expansive than that. Can you just talk about that for a few minutes?
So certainly we deal with people when they're having a crisis.
Yeah.
They can call us if they're having some sort of crisis. We want to help them get to the resources they need and quickly. But our main goal is to help to avoid those crises. Those situations are overwhelming and upsetting, and we want to make sure people are prepared so that they don't have to face those situations. So when somebody calls our helpline, they can call at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's the only time that they can call, if they want to get a list of resources in their area. A lot of times people will call us and say, somebody gave me your helpline number. I'm not really sure what you do, why I'm calling. We help people figure that out. So I tell people, even if you're not sure why you're calling, call us. Just call. So what we can do is connect people to resources right in their community as to what's available for home care agencies, elder law attorneys, support groups, really anything that's related to the care of somebody that's living with the disease.
Right.
If it's the person with the disease calling themselves, again, we'll get them connected to those resources. Sometimes we realize that the caller needs more than just a list of resources, though. So we offer something called a care consultation. And the care consultation is just a deeper dive into what it is that they're dealing with.
And if I call the hotline, and you decide that I need more of a care consultation, that mean you're connecting me with somebody else, or most of the answerers of the call actually kind of trained or knowledgeable, so they're actually doing a consultation?
So it really depends on the situation. For some people, we may say, okay, we got you the list of resources. We do think you need a care consultation. Do you want to have that happen right now? And we could transfer live to a care consultant at that time. For some people, they say, you know what, I would really like to have, my siblings involved in this call as well. So we may say, okay, well, let's schedule something in which you can all either be there via conference call or come into one of our offices.
And you could actually schedule something ahead, because that often happens, right? You've got the person in the middle of the crisis who's calling, but then if you're starting to talk about real decisions, they go, well, there's some other players here.
Right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful.
And I think it helps people a lot to make sure that everybody in the care team is on the same page. I can certainly talk to one family member and then they can relay the information, but I think when they're all there on the call or at the table together, it just has a bigger impact on learning, what are the symptoms, what are the strategies that we can use to help whoever it is that they're caring for. I think a lot of changes do have to take place over the course of the disease, and change is hard for anybody. So somebody living with a disease, it can be even more difficult, especially if they don't feel that they need to make those changes. For example, driving. Not to say that the day that somebody gets the diagnosis, they have to stop driving, but they do have to look at what the future holds. And sometimes that's a very difficult thing for people to give up is the driving. So we can talk about strategies on how to make that work. The biggest thing is when somebody gives up that independence and that driving aspect of their life, well, how will they get around? So let's make a plan on whether it's going to be a hired driver or public transportation or somebody in the family is going to help them out.
Right.
So there's a lot of discussions that need to happen that I think people don't usually think to have until there is a crisis. So,
I remember talking to a local doctor who was describing a recent suicide by a patient of his, and he said he's sure it's because he had to give up his license a couple months before, and he was like, and once again, you're in a place where we were just driving around Nantucket, right? So Nantucket, very concentrated population right in the center, and then it really spreads out. So without a car, right? This is a real challenge. If you're if you're a senior, if you don't have family here. But I guess the other thing that was striking to me about this notion of the conference calling is, while it's true every place that families are spread out, it's really true here, right? That because you have a lot of people like the folks we were just talking to at lunch. We were at the Salt Marsh for lunch, right? Talking to a guy who had been coming here for years and years. He eventually retired here, and now a few of his kids are here, right? But of course, the kids weren't raised here, so they're all over the place, right? They're really all over the place. So to be able to have a conference call with somebody that is kind of a real third party, and isn't like this is my sister's lawyer, right? And so that person's really looking after my sister. Just sounds like a great.
Yeah.
But I want to refer to this because we've just been talking for a while, because since you've been on the island for a while, and we want to mention. So you're at the Salt Marsh, and then earlier, Allison Forsgren, now the chair of the Council on Aging, has been kind enough to kind of show us around. So we were at Dreamland, right? We were at Dreamland, and we went to the Whaling Museum, right? So we did a lot of stuff, right? Just to try to give you a sense of the place. But we were also talking about some of the times when you've been on the hotline, because part of one of the things you do is. And by the way, is that true of all of the folks who are regional coordinators? That a kind of almost a piece of the job is that you spend some time on the hotline so you really see how this. You kind of get a sense
so
of
we all take a part of the helpline, and also do the care
helpline.
Hotline or helpline. You'll still reach us.
But in the course of that, we were talking about, and you just mentioned two things which I just thought were just so. These are the kind of the little things that life is about. Talk about the person, if you wouldn't mind, right, who was taking her husband to the bathroom.
Sure, yeah. So this actually was something that didn't happen on our helpline call. It happened at an education program. I often will offer a 3-week series for caregivers, and it's a nice way because it allows me to kind of get to know their story and their situation and how to help them in the best way possible. And
they get to know you.
Yes,
kind of get some kind of trust.
Sure, yeah. And I will say, going back to the helpline, it's not a one-time call, so I still can develop these relationships over time with people that I work with, which I think is really great. The earlier people call, the earlier we could establish that relationship, which is very helpful in helping them to be able to.
By the way, in parentheses, and so what does it cost to call? What does it cost to call the helpline?
Just some time.
Just
That's
some
it.
time. It doesn't cost anything. This is a
No.
completely free service of the Alzheimer's Association.
Right. All of our programs and services are at no cost. We're able to do that because we have our big fundraiser. The biggest one that we do is the Walk to End Alzheimer's. It happens in the fall every year. And we have something called the Longest Day that happens in June, and that's another big fundraiser that's helps us to be able to do all of this.
And the goal is to make all of your programs free.
Right.
So go back to talk about the person that you had met through the educational program.
Yeah, so at the first session, we talked a little bit about her situation. She said her husband was living with a younger onset Alzheimer's disease, and that she would take him to use the bathroom, and he would sit down on the toilet, and she would wait for him kind of in the doorway and just stand and wait for him. And she said he won't stay seated. So we talked a little bit about it, and I said, well, where are you when this is happening? She said, well, I'm standing there just kind of in case he needs me. I said, why don't you bring a chair into the bathroom? Because what he's seeing is you standing there, and it's almost like a cue to him that he should be standing as well. So she did end up trying it that week. She brought the chair in and sat down, and he stayed. He stayed sitting while she was sitting. Because oftentimes the person with the disease is looking to us for cues as to what they're supposed to do next.
Right.
So that helped.
Which leads into the interesting, one of the other things we were talking about. What is great about focusing on helping folks with dementia caused by Alzheimer's or caused by whatever is you don't need a graduate degree here, right, to be trying to get this right. Right? You need some people who have some experience and who can therefore say, based on that experience, oh, how about that? Right? So how do you in a dementia-friendly community, those folks, not only is there the helpline, but there are folks you can kind of talk to that can help you that way. How do you do that? And is there a community that you know of where that's been really successfully done?
Yeah, so a lot of the dementia-friendly Massachusetts communities, there is a contact and a website that they can get connected to help them get some resources. They can also use the Alzheimer's Association for tools that can help them to be able to be successful with the dementia-friendly community. We offer a training, like a customer service-based training for any business that is interested in becoming dementia-friendly.
For people whose employees, in the course of their day, whether they're in the bank or whether they're a waitress or whether they're the town clerk, right? I know we were sitting at lunch with the assistant town clerk, right? Who may be bumping into these issues.
Right. And I think if you work somewhere long enough, at some point, somebody will come through the door that has some form of dementia. And whether you recognize that or not, it's always nice to be equipped with the tools that you may need to be able to respond to somebody that, I think often, depending on your situation, people kind of just write off as, wow, that was kind of crazy what happened there. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we have a better understanding of what people might be struggling with, they may not walk in and say, I have dementia. And it's probably unlikely that will happen.
Right.
But recognizing what some of the signs and symptoms are is going to help you to be able to communicate better with the person and be more understanding, have some more empathy surrounding that. I think so much of it is the training behind it, but also a lot of it is just being a nice person.
It's being a nice person, but being a nice person in an educated way.
Right.
And so, does the Alzheimer's Association provide some of those kinds of trainings?
We do, yes. So we do have trainings specifically for professionals that work in the healthcare field, that are working, say, in a nursing home or a home care agency, whatever it may be. We do have training specifically geared toward those folks. We also have this customer service-based training where people that happen to work in a certain business just want to recognize that they have people in their community that may be struggling with some form of dementia or memory loss, and how they can help them. They want to be invested in their community.
They want to be invested.
And I think that not only is that good for business, but it's also good for the community. So it's a way for people to really feel connected and not leave anybody out.
And I mention this because I know that's one of the things that Allison Forsgren was talking to you about. Was we're trying to figure that out, because kind of next after this, we're going back to the salt marsh, because she has kind of invited some people to an open forum to kind of be talking about this. Now, go back to one of the other stories that you mentioned, because in terms of people's the importance of the helpline. The woman who was taking care of had been taking care of her mother for a long time, and now the mother's kind of slipping away.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, some of the calls we get, certainly have a lot of emotion attached to them, especially when it's family or somebody very close to them. So I was working on the helpline yesterday and received a call from a woman that her mother is in the end stages of the disease. She's using hospice. I think, there's a struggle there as to, I think she's struggling with, is this really time for mom? So a lot of it was walking through, what she's doing for her mom and reassuring her that she is doing all of the right things. I think she needs to hear that. She does have family that lives in another state and isn't there, and I think
but they all have a
lot to say.
They all have an opinion.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're saying things that she should be doing, and so then yes, she questions herself. I think that's only normal and natural. But I think she really truly is doing everything right and everything that she should be for her mother. I think she worries that, what if I'm missing something? What if I'm not doing something right? And the reason why she's slipping is because of me. But, again, going through some disease education and letting her know what, the end stages of the disease look like, as well as reassuring her that the services she has in place right now makes the most sense for her situation. I also like to let people know what other alternatives are if she did decide to change her mind about that.
Right.
and let her know what that might look like too. So
that she's got some options.
right. I never
but
want to
also some
convince anybody of this is what you should do, because it's not my situation to make that call. But I do like to lay out all the different options so that somebody can make an educated decision about what they want to pursue.
And the notion that you can just, that conversation is just a phone call away, right? When you're in the middle and you're just feeling, and you're drowning.
Yep.
You're just drowning, and your loved one is dying.
Yeah.
To be able to talk to somebody that kind of gets all of that.
And for her, it's really tough to get out to support groups in her area, just because of work and taking care of mom and all of that.
And she's taking care of mom, which is one of the reasons why I do these cable shows.
Right.
Because I know a lot of the folks that need to know about this can't get out of the house to go to
Exactly.
a program or anything.
Exactly.
So we are now heading over to the Salt Marsh, where we're going to kind of talk to some of the other players, for want of a better term, here to kind of be talking about how to make Nantucket more dementia friendly. And then you're going to the Valentine's Day dance.
I'm excited.
At our island home, which you have not seen. And
haven't.
I know I've mentioned it to you, and I've mentioned it many times on the show. The island home, my favorite nursing home, the one that I always, when I'm back in America, and I talk to folks, and they can't even conceive of a nice nursing home. And I always say to people, like I remember my mother would say, promise me you'll never send me to a nursing home. Well, the nursing home she had in her head is the standard nursing home, and I've seen a lot of those, and that's not our island home, which is why it's special. So we're going to go to the Valentine's Day dance, right, which is done by the Coast Guard, if I recall correctly.
Great.
So we get to see that. So thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for coming out to Nantucket. I bet you'll be back.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful for you, especially as things progress here in terms of the development of Nantucket as a dementia-friendly community. And I look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Bergeron Briefs. Thank you very much.